This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome aboard for your very own sunset safari. Especially a warm welcome to our kids from across the world, from the USA, Ireland, Singapore, Spain, Scotland, Botswana, South Africa, India, and Canada. We're so happy to have you on board. I'm sure there's lots of other kids and families that are also joining us. My name is Trishala, and I've got BK on camera this afternoon. We are very happy to take you out. Remember, it's live and interactive, so you can send your questions to kidsquestions at WildEarth.tv, and you can ask us whatever you like about anything out here in the African bush. Down here in South Africa, where it is rather warm this afternoon, about 29 degrees Celsius or 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're out here on quarantine clearings, looking at these impala that are in a bit of shade, which is what BK and I will be doing today too. Now, those impala are beautiful, but there is a large male kudu that's just run up behind us. Sorry to swing you across like that, guys. Shoop. This is my favorite antelope. A male kudu. Now, this is interesting because there's quite a few different antelope around here on quarantine. I see impala. This lovely kudu. Look how beautiful his horns are. My favorite set of horns I've ever seen. Yes, I'm talking to you. Lovely. There's also some wildebeest in the background, but by far, this guy is the most handsome. It looks like he is trying to follow a female. Can you see that? Oh no. I think he's very interested in making some babies. This is quite a pursuit. Look at that darting from side to side. Now he is a very handsome bull. That's what we call a male kudu. A bull. And with those large horns and the large ears. Look at this female, no horns. Call her a cow. And she's got these beautiful large ears so she can listen out all around her. Oh. Did she hear me? Now, why would big ears be important? Now, animals like kudu, even though we're out here on the quarantine clearings, animals like kudu, they don't mind being in the bushes. And when sound moves, sound sometimes gets stopped by objects in the way, like trees and bushes. And that's why other antelope don't like to be in the bush too much. They prefer the open. But kudus, with their large ears, they can actually be in the bush and hear fine. Anyway, I'm going to keep on looking for other animals, but I'm going to send you over to somebody else at andBeyond's Ngala, and that is Eric, who wants to say good afternoon.
Good afternoon and welcome to andBeyond Ngala. My name is Eric, and behind the camera, as always, is Marcel. I'm sure you saw a moment ago we were at this large waterhole that we were at this morning, and we were just coming to have a look to see what's around. And the hippos are right in the middle of the waterhole. There's a nice big buffalo that's just come down to drink. What we were actually trying to look for is that fish eagle that we flushed and disturbed this morning. And so basically where the hippos are, there's a tree directly above them and to the left. That's where it flew into, but it's no longer there, unfortunately. But where it dropped, the thing that we were wondering what it was, there's a whole pile of feathers. So I think it might have come back to have something to nibble on, and it must have been a bird, just a funny looking bird that we saw in its tannins. Where are we? There are those three hippos, and then if we pan to the left, a little bit, Marcel. We've got that nice big buffalo bull. And I'm sure that this is the same buffalo that keeps coming into this waterhole. It seems like every afternoon it's been grazing around this area. And it comes down in the heat of the day to lie in the water to cool off. And just look how it's positioned itself. It's reversed and sat down so it can see any approaching threat coming from land. And it's pretty confident that the hippos, and I mean there's no crocodiles here, but I'm sure even the largest of crocodiles wouldn't go after a big old buffalo bull like this. And yeah, it's just waiting and cooling off. I'm sure he'll be ruminating, so chewing and just digesting his food a little bit more before he starts to get up and move around. Amos and Anna, all the way from Singapore, is asking about the change in behaviors. And we've actually got two really nice examples right in front of us, Amos and Anna. We've got hippos and we've got buffaloes, and they've got two very different behaviors at around sunset time. And so you tend to get two different types of animals on safari or in Africa. You get the nocturnal animals, which are these hippos, and things like lions, leopards, smaller little creatures like genets or mongooses that you might have heard of before. But basically, they are active at nighttime. And so they spend their day resting during the day. And then at nighttime, when it's dark, it's nice and cool, they decide to get out. For hippos, for example, will leave the waterhole and start feeding around this area. Lions might do the similar thing. From resting, they might get up and start looking for some food, or maybe patrolling and marking their territory. And sometimes it will happen at around sunset time. I guess that's when it's starting to get dark. If the temperature's nice and cool, then they might move even a little bit before sunset. With these buffaloes and most of the other antelope species like impalas, waterbuck we find around this waterhole quite a lot, they are what we call diurnal, so active during the day. And so they are eating and feeding in the cooler parts of the morning, and they're probably resting on a hot day like today. And then once it starts to get once it starts to get cooler at least, then they'll carry on. And then when it starts getting dark, they will change their behavior completely, and then they'll look to rest up for the day. I hope that answers your question. We are probably just going to spend a couple more minutes around this waterhole to see if we can see that fish eagle that we saw this morning. Otherwise, we'll send you across to James to see what he's up to for the afternoon.
We've got some plant heads, very exciting. Oh, there, in amongst the tawny grass, seems to be a tawny figure. That is a lion. Hello, my name is James Henry. On camera is David. And over there is the famous Djuma Pride. I know they don't look like much right now, but eventually they'll stand up and start doing things, and we will move around a bit and see if we can get a better view. This morning there were 8 cubs here and 4 lionesses, so that's exciting. Delilah, lions do sleep a little bit at night, but mostly they move at night. So you'd find them moving. When they do move, it's normally at night. But the night is long here. These days, it's dark by 6 and only light at 6:30. So they'll have to sleep for some of that because they don't do a lot of work generally. They're normally asleep for 20 hours of the day. So if it's dark for 12 of those, they've got to be sleeping for at least 8 of them. So normally what you'll find is they'll get up as the sun goes down and it gets dark. They'll move around a bit. Often they'll sleep through the middle of the night and then they get up again before dawn. But it really does vary. It's difficult to say exactly how they'll be. Until they're age 9, well, you're looking at them. Well, you're sort of looking at them. Mostly you're looking at grass. But in amongst the grass is the buffalo's major predator. Lions, for sure. Sometimes hyenas, but almost always lions are the predators of buffalo. One thing I did want to point out here is how you can see their color is so brilliant. And this is why they are the color that they are. It's when the grass is green and tall, it's really easy for them to hide behind things. It's when it turns to the winter colors like this, and this grass will get short quite quickly now as winter progresses, and it will thin out. That's when this color is so useful, because now they're exactly the same color as the winter grass. When the vegetation is thinner, they're very well camouflaged. When it's thick and green, color doesn't matter so much. They could be pink really a lot of the time. No one would notice because they use the bushes to hide behind rather than camouflage. Right, let's go to Eric. He promised you an eagle that likes to fish. Let's go and see what it looks like.
Welcome back. Good to see you so soon again. We managed to find this African fish eagle, which is really cool. We were actually focused on the tree that we saw it, and we didn't spend too much time scanning around. And lucky with Marcel's extra powerful zoom, we get to see it. It is very far away, so we can't really see it too well. But the first thing that strikes us is that very white head and chest, and that pops out immediately. And that's one of the first things that we saw. And then once you look a bit closer, you can start to see a much browner wing and almost black around the underbody there. So this is an African fish eagle. It's one of the most iconic birds in Africa, I would say. You find them all over the water sources, natural water sources, and pretty much throughout the whole continent, and they've just got a magnificent call. And they spend most of their time around this waterhole, and they hunt just like their name suggests. Most of their diet is fish, although this one was feeding on a bird this morning, so they would take advantage of any sort of duck or goose around the waterhole. We think that one was a hornbill just by looking at the feathers this morning. And really nice to see. And if you see one, you'll often see another one. But I've been scanning the tree that this one is in, and the trees around it, and unfortunately haven't seen that very distinctive white chest and head. So I think this one might be by itself. Yeah. It's so far away. I mean, it almost looks on its right hand wing, it seems a little bit patchy. But I don't know if it's just because it's grooming itself and cleaning, but it could be a young adult. Eli, you're asking if the African fish eagle's endangered, and I don't think so. They thrive certainly in southern Africa, and they really enjoy these nice big water sources. And luckily, in places like the Okavango Delta, the Zambezi Valley, there's a whole bunch of water, and they probably, I would say, depending on where you go, I guess, but they're probably one of the more common eagles that you can find, and you can find them pretty much anywhere throughout the continent. I think that's why a whole lot of people love them, because they all have got these memories of fish eagles when they go fishing on the lake, or if they have gone sometimes even to the ocean. There's fish eagles. A lot of one of the first calls that I could ever identify was the African fish eagle, and I think that's pretty unanimous with any South African who's into their birding on nature. My thought is going to what would be the most endangered eagle that we have in southern Africa, and that would be a good question. Sure. Gabriel from the UK, you 11 years old and you're already asking about trees. I'm very, very impressed. So you asked about the fish eagle's nest and what tree it is in. I haven't seen a nest, Gabriel, and you'll just basically look for a big wooden platform with lots and lots of sticks clustered together. It's quite a messy nest, and most eagles nest on those wooden platforms or those stick platforms. And I don't see one here, but it's a good sign. This is the second time we've seen this fish eagle. So if it finds a mate and they pair up, there's a very, very good chance that they could have a nest here, which would be very cool. And then I can maybe just ask Marcel to zoom out a little bit and we can show you the tree. Okay, it is quite tough, especially because it is so far, but it's a really, really tall tree. And then if you look at the bark, it's quite pale in color. And then I don't know if we'll be able to see this really nicely, but Gabriel, they'll have small little rectangular blocks that go all the way up the tree, and that's one of the ways that we can identify that tree, and it's the first thing that I look for. And so this tree is called a leadwood, and it's part of the Combretum family. It's got a very, very, very hard wood. They're super slow growing. And termites have difficulty breaking down the wood, so when they die, they tend to stick around for a very, very long time. I know one of the rangers who's been here pretty much his whole life. He reckons, his name is Dyke, he thinks that he's seen these leadwoods in this area, and he would be surprised if they've grown maybe 50 centimeters in 25 years or so. Vikram, you're asking how birds sleep, and they sleep, I guess, like this. So they perch in a nice safe spot, and I mean the majority of birds are diurnal, just like we were talking about a little bit earlier. So they're mostly active during the daytime. So at night time they'll find some of these bushes that are very, very thick where they can hide and hopefully remain out of sight of the predators. And then some species will put their head basically underneath their wing, and that's how they'll sleep. I've seen photos, especially on cold winter mornings, of lots and lots of birds stacked up right next to one another. So they try and keep themselves warm in the cold weather. And so they'll literally fluff up with one another, and you'll sometimes see a family of 7 or 8 birds on one tiny little piece of stick, just so they can try and gain their heat a little bit more. Sure. I was just using my binoculars past the buffalo we saw a bit earlier, and I thought I saw a zebra coming down to drink, but unfortunately it was just another log. So I think we might move away from this waterhole. What we will end up doing is heading down into probably the southern part of the reserve. It's an area that we haven't explored yet in the last couple of days, so just to go and see what's going on there. And whilst we get into the southern part of the reserve, I think we'll send you across to Trish to see how her afternoon is going.
Eric, my afternoon is doing well. I think that I am going to copy you, and I am going to go to a waterhole too. In fact, at this waterhole, I saw a fish eagle recently as well. So let's see if we'll be lucky. It's all the way in the south. It's called Twin Dams. Camden, you're 8 years old. You'd like to know, what is the most relaxed animal we get here? That's an interesting question. It depends. It really does depend. Sometimes impalas can be really brave and relaxed. When you drive past, sometimes they'll get up if they're sitting down. Sometimes they won't. I call those ones the brave ones. Hyena cubs are so relaxed that they will come and interfere with the vehicle if you are near the den, which is quite nice. I think it's quite sweet. I always have to muster up such coarseness within myself to tell them, no, stop it. But I have to. Otherwise they get used to vehicles, and that's no good. I'll get used to interfering with vehicles. So I think hyenas are pretty relaxed, especially when it comes to not following them, because when you follow them, they don't like that. But when they come into camp quite a lot, the other day after drive, I followed 4 hyenas straight into camp at dinner time, because they probably knew, oh, these humans, they eat around this time. And they're absolutely relaxed. They come to the front of my room sometimes in the middle of the night. They're very relaxed. Now this is the waterhole I'm coming to, and not as much as Eric had going on at that waterhole. Still very pretty though, don't you think? I think so. Ooh, I see a terrapin having a nice swim. It's just popped its head under now. Let me see, there's a dark spot. There we go. Terrapins are like a mix between a turtle and a tortoise. So turtles are out at sea. Excuse me. And they have fins. They don't have clawed feet. But tortoises are on the land, and they have clawed feet. Terrapins are a little bit kind of in between. Ooh, Eric has one of Louise's favorite birds raiding a nest, so let's go over and have a look.
We started moving south and we made it 20 meters, and then we got distracted by this beautiful bird. And just look at the color of it, all grey overall. And then at the moment, I think it's got like a pinky head with yellow legs. When we first saw it, it had a yellow face completely, and now it's turned that color. And if you look what it's doing, it's foraging in those dead branches. And it's looking for food at the moment. So it's looking for any little lizards or reptiles, maybe even some birds that are nesting there. And when it starts to get excited, it literally blushes, and that face will turn from yellow to this bright red color. So this is a bird called an African Harrier hawk, or the old name, which a lot of people still recognize it by, is a Djuma. And that's the South African name for it, at least. But they're very unique. I mean, this is how they hunt. They walk through trees like this, and they find little crevices where these reptiles or birds might be hiding, and they try and fish them out, either by gripping them with their hooked beak or by their claws on their feet or their talons. And they've got a very, very flexible knee that can bend pretty much in any direction, so they can get into almost any nook and cranny. It doesn't take a lot for it to disappear. It's literally behind one tiny little bush. There it's coming out. It might jump from one branch to another. You just see the head coming out. There we go. Quick little flap of the wings. Kamaya, you're 11 years old and you've got 3 peacocks in your house at India. That's very, very cool. I wonder if they're wild or maybe domesticated. We don't have peacocks in South Africa, or we do, but they're not native to Southern Africa. So they are actually brought in from India. And so we don't find them in wilderness places like the Kruger National Park and other areas. We find them where people have brought them in as pets, basically. They are an absolutely exquisite bird, though. I'm very excited for you that you've got 3 behind your house. So let's see, this bird's moved from left to right along this tree, and it's gone up higher. There are a few ground birds that aren't very happy with it at the moment. They're alarm calling at it. Look at that hanging. So yeah, it's just about getting dive bombed by a lilac-breasted roller. That's very cool. Let's maybe see what happens. It looks like it could have found something. I mean, it's opened up its wings to stabilize itself. I'd love to see its face. No, it's lost interest. Okay. So we're going to carry on going, see if we can get further south than 20 meters, then our last little stop. And we'll send you across to Trish, who I think is with a lizard of sorts.
A very interesting reptile indeed. It is a water monitor, everyone, or a Nile monitor. Can you see how well camouflaged it looks there? Now, just the fact that it's called a water monitor can tell you where it likes to live, near the water, and it's a very good swimmer. Now, all the lizards, these ones are the largest types. There's the Komodo dragon that is largest. But of the families of lizards, they are the largest. The family that this guy falls into, we call them varanids. That's the family of Varanidae. And can you see that they're black with little yellow spots and markings on them? I've once been scared by one of these guys when I was standing near the edge of a lake before. Because they can actually get pretty large, about 2 meters or so. Now this one is just enjoying some sun. And they need to get some sun because, again, they're reptiles. And we know that reptiles need to get their warmth from their surroundings. Oh, did you see? He looked at us for a second. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? Almost looks like a little dinosaur, don't you think? Hi, Kerry. You're 8 years old and you're from the UK. You'd like to know how far a water monitor can swim. I don't know how far they can swim because generally they like to stay in a particular water hole or kind of joined water bodies. So if there's a few dams close by, then they'll stay in those areas. They don't move very much between them. If they found one nice one that they like, then they'd rather stay here. I don't know how far they will move in order to get from one water source to another. I have heard stories of water monitors in desperate situations traveling across country, even across very dry areas to get to water. But I think those are more the exception than the rule. Anyway, I'm glad that we could have seen this cool guy. I'll send you back over to another cool guy with some flat cats.
Unfortunately, our lions are not doing very much at the moment, but that's totally expected. It's a lovely warm afternoon. I think it's probably around 25 degrees today. Let me just quickly check that for you. 25 degrees or so. Yeah, 29 it says. 29 degrees Celsius, 84 Fahrenheit. I'm not convinced it's that hot, but maybe that's because we're sitting in the shade. And they're out in the sun, you see. Normally, if it's that hot, they won't be out in the sun. And there's been just a very little movement. Some of the youngsters getting up and moving around and playing with the others. And I think we're going to stay here and just keep an eye on them, because I think they'll get up and start doing some stuff in the next little while. If they don't, we'll go off and see if we can find some elephants and then come back here later in the afternoon. But for the moment, here we are with the famous Djuma Pride. And but, you know, they often don't hunt very much during the day. Sometimes they don't hunt at all. So if they've caught themselves a buffalo or something like that, then you'll find that they don't hunt for 4 or 5 days. And if they've eaten something small, like, let's say, a baby wildebeest, then maybe they'll spend a couple of hours hunting the next day. If they're really hungry, though, you know, they can hunt for 6 hours sometimes. That's quite unusual, but I mean, for up to 6 to 8 hours even. And they're not really like us, where, you know, human beings expect to eat and rest after a certain period. They will just go until they have to, you know. If they have to eat, and they just keep hunting. They don't expect to have to rest, and they'll only rest when they get really tired. So it's a difficult question to answer. Gabriel, we don't know when they last ate because they haven't always been on Djuma. So they go off Djuma, which is the reserve that we are sitting on now, and they go to other reserves like Arathusa to the west of us, and as far down as Mala Mala and Londolozi to the south of us. So I'm not sure when they last ate. They ate a buffalo about a week ago, we know that much. But I suspect they've eaten something between then and now, maybe an impala or two, or maybe even a wildebeest. But I don't think they ate last night. They don't seem to have eaten last night. They do seem to have been hunting some buffalo, though. We had their tracks around, the tracks of a herd of buffalo. And it's a real indication that it's kind of winter now, because these lions would no way be lying in the sun in the middle of summer. Oh, look at that action. Now we've got action. A rollover. Well done, lions. Yes, for sure, Eva, exactly like with human beings. Young lions will be much more active than their parents. And I think you'll probably find that, I mean, if these were only adult lions, I don't think we'd be sitting here. I'm hoping that the cubs will get up and start playing sometime fairly soon. It's just like with humans, you know, when you like to play and you've got lots of energy and your folks want to go to sleep or sit down and read a book or watch TV or something, and you just want to get up and go outside and play and throw a ball or whatever it is that you like to do. It's exactly the same with most mammals, not just lions, but just about all mammals, where youngsters have a lot more energy to play and mess around than do adults. And that's because playing is an important part of growing up. It's an important part of building the muscles and the nerves that you need to grow up. It's an important part of learning the lessons that you need for your brain to form properly. And so you'll find that most young mammals are more active than the adults. I can't think of an example where that isn't the case, actually. As you can see, this adult is very inactive. It looks like my dad after Sunday lunch. Chloe, at the moment, sitting here right now, there are 4 lionesses, and there are 8 cubs they counted this morning. There should be another 3 lionesses belonging to the pride, and we don't know where they are, but we did see some tracks of theirs going into the reserve north of us earlier this morning. So maybe they're up there. I don't know if they all came up here together, or if those 3 came up separately. It's difficult to say. But what is interesting is that I think once a pride gets to around this size, it's not unusual for the pride to split. And so you'll sometimes find that a big pride like this with that many lionesses will split up. And so maybe those 3 are going to make their own pride. The average sort of size of a lion pride in this area is about 3 or 4 lionesses and their dependent offspring, so they're babies, they're cubs. You can see there how perfectly camouflaged they are for this time of the year. Madeleine, that's a good question, all the way from the United Kingdom. Nkuhuma means brown ivory tree. Now, a brown ivory tree is a beautiful, beautiful tree, one of my favorites. And it normally grows on termite mounds, although in this part of the world it doesn't often grow on termite mounds. Oh, there we go. Got a little cub that's up. That's nice to see. See, they are a bit more active than the adults. Let's see where he goes. He'll go and say hello to another adult. Possibly lie down again. Yep. But they'll definitely get up and start mucking around the cubs, I suspect. Hopefully in that little clearing. Yeah, you can hear them talking now. The cubs are starting to talk. The cubs are not very small anymore. And so, I mean, they're starting to sleep more and more. That was lovely. All right, we won't move just yet. We'll stay here for a little while longer. Let's go back to Eric. I don't know what he's got at Ngala, but I'm sure he'll tell us something very interesting.
Welcome back to Ngala. We have made it a little bit further than 20 meters south. We're driving very, very slowly at the moment. And for those of you who weren't with us this morning, we had quite an epic start to the day. We were following a young male leopard, and this male leopard was walking along a road which is basically parallel to this one, and it's only maybe about 50 meters or so away, so it's not far away at all. And all of a sudden this male leopard sat down in the road and then darted away. And a few seconds later, 3 hyenas came around the corner, and so that leopard was trying to avoid the hyenas. And so I thought that maybe what it was trying to do is just get back onto this road and continue walking down towards where it was going. And so we're just coming back here to check to see if there's any tracks, maybe on top of our vehicle tracks from this morning, see if there's any activity, and we can work out whether or which direction at least he's decided to move. So that's why I'm just driving nice and slowly. It is, if you look around us, it's incredibly dense. So there's lots and lots of bushes around here, but just on the other side of these bushes are these big open clearings. And so this male leopard, we thought maybe was trying to look for something to hunt. We might have used these thickets to get towards those open clearings. So Hannah, you're asking why there's not so many crocodiles, and it's a good question. And basically it goes all the way back to the beginning of Ngala, and we never really had permanent water sources. So we'd never really had these big water holes that you see now. They were all built in the 1960s by the original landowner of this area. And crocodiles need water. There used to be water in the Timbavati that flowed for a short time in the year, but not enough to sustain a crocodile's lifestyle. And so this area is historically a lot drier than the area. I know it's only 30-40 kilometers away, but it's much, much drier than the Sabi Sands. You've got those 2 beautiful rivers, the Sabi and the Sand River, which basically hold water throughout the year. And as a result, you get these nice big crocodiles that live in there too. We do have 1 waterhole, 2 waterholes that I know of that have crocodiles in Ngala, and that's very far to the western part of the reserve. Amber, you've asked which of the big cats in Africa live the longest. And it's a very good question. And off the top of my head, I mean, generally you look at all of the numbers, and typically a cat in the wild might live from up until about 15, 16, 17 years old. Is a very, very good innings for a leopard or a lion or a cheetah. I would have to say that lions are probably got more chance of living longer than a leopard and a cheetah. And the reason I say that is there's more of them. So they hang around in big prides, which means that if they can't hunt for themselves, they might be able to rush in and get some scraps off of meat, and that will keep them going for a lot longer. If a female cheetah or a female leopard, if they get injured and they can't hunt, or if they become too weak and too old to hunt, then they've got no one really looking after them. So they would more than likely die a lot quicker than what a female lion would. And males live way shorter than females typically because of the competitive lifestyle they live. They have to compete for territories, they have to compete with one another, and it just is a very taxing thing to do, so it takes a lot out of them. And so, I mean, a male lion might live until 10, 12 years. A lioness, like I said, 17 years is a very, very good lifespan. I have heard of lions living up until about 20 years old, which is very, very old. So these are the clearings now that I was talking about. No sign of any animals here. Usually we do see lots of impalas and wildebeest, but I think it might just be a little bit too hot, and so they're probably still in the shade, which I think this male leopard might be too. So if we don't find any tracks or signs of him, then we're going to continue down towards the southern part of the reserve and see what that section has to offer. So things like leopards, things like lions and maybe elephants are on the cards for this afternoon. But whilst we're in that area, we're going to send you across to James, who's with lions still.
There's been some yawning, there's a bit of stretching going on there. Oof, look at this now, we've got heavy action. Hold on to your seats, everybody. We could even see some lying down again. Now, believe it or not, I heard the other day that when a lion yawns, it's not only doing it because it's tired like you do, it actually helps to cool the brain. I don't know if that lion's brain is particularly hot. Sometimes when there's this sort of thing where they're just getting up and doing a bit of yawning and a bit of cleaning and grooming, they'll get up and move, but I think it's probably a bit early for that. But it's not too early for the cubs to start having a horse around. Do lions snore, Delilah? I don't think they snore like dogs snore. I mean, we always had a dog called Trubshaw. We didn't always have a dog called Trubshaw. We had a dog called Trubshaw. And Trubshaw used to snore, definitely. But I don't know if I've probably heard a few lions snoring, yes. But they don't do it like human beings snore. I don't think that their nasal passages are designed like ours. And so I don't think that they have the same equipment that makes them snore like we do. Yes, yeah. I don't know how complicated I should go with this question because I don't know how old you are. But lions hunt in a number of ways. Essentially what they do is they get up and they move around, and if there is something big that they want to hunt, they will split up, and some will go around the side of the lion or the prey, and some will wait in ambush, and those ones that have gone around the side will try and chase the prey into the ones that are waiting in ambush. That's generally how it's done. But sometimes it's just a chase, they'll stalk up to an animal using as much cover as they can, and then when they get close by, they'll burst from cover and chase the animal down. And sometimes they can just be lucky and they'll be lying behind a bush like these guys are now, and the wildebeest will come past and they'll just jump on it. And so there are lots of different ways that they do it. I've watched them get into the middle of a herd of wildebeest in the Masai Mara in some very long grass, and then when a wildebeest came past, they just jumped up out of the grass and grabbed him. Does that help? All right, we're going to welcome our adult viewers now to send through questions using the hashtag SafariLive. Otherwise, of course, no, sorry, that's wrong. Using the hashtag WildEarth. Old habits really do die hard. Or the YouTube chat stream, or the Twitch chat stream. You can send us your questions and comments, insults, jokes. Keep us entertained on this afternoon where the lions are being extremely soporific. We are shaded by a lovely marula tree, and so we're sitting in the shade, enjoying the presence of the Djuma Pride. We haven't seen them for a long time. Well, we haven't had them for any length of time for a long time. We had them a few weeks back in the evening, but not for very long. Let's go to Trishala and find out what she's doing this afternoon, if she's going down to water to try and find some of the elephants, perhaps.
Oh, that is a great idea. I would love to see some illies. James was saying to me this morning that there were illies all around. He said there were about 8 different herds. So it would be awesome to find some illies. And I'm getting the strong stench of a herbivore. Can't tell yet if it is elephant that I'm smelling or even some buffalo. Now it is gone. It had been some dung. So I am in the east today. And I think I'm going to pay a visit to Buffalo Dam. Maybe even check out Chitwa. And I mean, a leopard wouldn't hurt, right? So at the moment I am around Mamba Road. And James said this morning that he saw some tracks around here in Twin Dams. So I just thought I'd come and have a look. Hi Emma, you're 8 years old and you'd like to know what are the most crazy baby animals. Hyenas are pretty crazy baby animals. Pretty crazy. All baby animals are quite crazy because baby animals need to play and figure out the world, much like baby humans, right? And if you don't act crazy as a baby human, nobody's going to be able to tell you, hey, you're acting crazy. So, lots of baby lions, baby leopards, hyenas, all the baby mammals, they act a little bit crazy. And that's how they learn what's allowed and what's not allowed, and what's nice and what's not nice. All those kind of things, which is very important because that's how we learn how to be a family. I'm trying to think of a particular creature that I think is crazy when it's a baby. No, I like baby hyenas. They're pretty funny. Baby elephants, they're very funny. Exactly. They can be quite crazy, but that's really important. Baby dwarf mongoose, all the mammals basically are very crazy. Humans, human babies, pretty crazy, I think. Yes, puppies, wild dog puppies, pretty crazy. Even baby hippos. They can be quite crazy the way they lift themselves up and they open their mouths like they're big, and then sometimes they snap, try to bite the water. And they don't have teeth. They just have these pink gums. It's all very sweet. In fact, there is a baby hippo at Buffelshoek Dam. So when you go up there, I will show you. Hopefully baby hippo will be out and about. Well, I don't seem to find any tracks here. So I'm going to swing round, I think, and go back to Buffelshoek, or towards Buffelshoek Dam, and send you back to James, as he's sitting there with his lions.
Yes, we are sitting with our lions. Our lions are opening their eyes a little bit. So we are hoping that they are going to be doing more than that shortly. Gambling about, perhaps. Doing the yoga or the tai chi. But possibly just lying there doing absolutely nothing. I suppose they will force us to get up and start moving around ourselves if they don't do anything in the next little while. Just seems... I remember a time when Ngala Pride was spending 99% of their time on Djuma, and we'd come out and we'd sit with them for 10 minutes and then move on, go looking around for something else, and then maybe come back to them towards the end of drive. But we've had so little of them of late that now, if we find them, we're prepared to deal with them behaving like recumbent blancmanges in the shade. Which I suppose we should. I mean, there's no reason a lion shouldn't behave like a recumbent blancmange in the shade. We humans would do it if we could. Indeed, many do. I know a number of humans who behave like recumbent blancmanges in the shade. They don't even need to be in the shade. No, Dove, there are no males here currently, and there were male tracks on the reserve this morning, and one crossed out at least, but they were going all over the place, so I don't know if there isn't another one maybe lying around here somewhere. Oh, look at this, David. Hold on to your seat. Don't lose focus. Might even be some contact between two lions. As Louise says, wawa weewa. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it means something like, good gracious me, look at that. See, one is now admonishing the other for being too enthusiastic about life. Please settle down, I'm trying to sleep. Pip. I think lions sleep about the same in winter. I don't think they sleep necessarily more or less during the winter time. You know, they'll probably get up earlier in winter because obviously it gets darker quicker and cooler quicker. You wouldn't find them doing anything at all in this area at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in sort of February. But I think they sleep a lot during the night in winter. They definitely don't move around all night long. So I think there's quite a lot of snoozing that goes on during the night time. Yeah, I can't, the energy balance is about the same, summer and winter. And although it's very hot here in summer and can get pretty chilly at night here in the winter, it's not like the food availability changes. It's not like it's not like the climate changes so vastly that they use that much more or less energy at one time of the year. So no, I'm going to say they sleep about the same. Good grief. Hello, Mrs. Grays. You have very kindly told us your age. Now, I'm sure you won't mind my saying that you're not a young woman anymore, and it is wonderful to have you on board with us, typing away on your keyboard or your phone, aged 89. I'm most impressed, and there are 8 cubs in this pride at the moment. There were 9 until fairly recently. We think maybe one has gone missing, and so there are 8 cubs here now. Mrs. Grays, well done. You just made my day. 89 years old on the tweet. Good for you. Right, we have a question from the country of India that's living in the state of Georgia. I think it's actually a human being called India in the state of Georgia in the United States. I'm assuming it's in the United States as opposed to Georgia in Eastern Europe, but it could be Georgia in Eastern Europe. Anyway, India. Lions find their prey by smelling, listening, and looking. So all 3 ways. They'll smell them, they'll hear them calling, and then they'll see them. When they get close, when the actual hunt is on though, it's eyes. That's what they're using. And they're using some kind of communication with each other that I don't believe we fully understand either. If you watch them spreading out into the formation, the ambush formation for a hunt, there's no perceptible communication that I can see. There might just be the odd look, and everybody knows where to go. Everybody sneaks around to where they need to be. And nobody says anything. And I must say, the one thing that you cannot fault them for is patience. Massively patient animals. All right, Eric is still driving around Ngala. He went from hero to zero this morning with wild dogs and leopards in less than an hour.
We are still moving south, which is good. Managed to get some distance between us and the Waterhole, and still haven't gotten to the other set of waterholes that we would like to go and have a look for. This area is quite unique because we've got these, or quite a few roads, not quite a few roads through this area, which makes the areas without roads very, very large. And so sometimes we get animals that walk into these areas and only come out several days later. And we have been seeing tracks of wild dogs within this area quite recently, so I thought it might be worth us just coming down to have a look to see if we can see any fresher signs of them. And it's starting to get to the time of day that if the wild dogs were unsuccessful in their hunt this morning, there's a very good chance that they might want to continue their hunt this afternoon. So we might as well just try and check these open areas. Just want to maybe stop here for a second, Marcel, just pan across. What I want to show you is just the color of the bush. And look at the golden grass. There's a couple of green leaves, but the majority of it is all yellow. And all of these bushes are starting to lose their leaves. Hikram, you are asking about the top predator in Africa, and I would have to say the hyena by far. It's the most successful, it's the most widespread. Not a lot of people consider a hyena as a predator, and they predominantly think of it as a scavenger, but it is, for me, by far the most successful. If we're looking at hunting statistics, I would say that the wild dog in Africa is probably the most, or at least one of the most successful large predators that we have in Africa. So what I was just explaining about the leaves around this area, whilst I drive myself into a bush, is once the leaves start dropping, the visibility and the distance that you can see increases a lot. And so it allows things like predators, especially cheetahs, that will move through this area knowing that they can see much further than they usually can in the summertime. And so in the wintertime around Ngala, we tend to see a lot more cheetah activity than we do in the summertime. So I'm hoping that within the next couple of months, our cheetah viewing increases quite regularly. Humanus, yes, I would say so. I think it's very, very hard to put an actual percentage next to the amount of successful hunts that these animals have. Lions, I mean, one thing that works against them is that they are ambush predators, so they need to get as close to their prey species as possible before they attack and they pounce. And so that's very, very difficult to do. A lot of the time, lions will get seen before they're close enough to make a successful attack. And so their success rate decreases a lot because of that. Hyenas hunt in a slightly different fashion, and it's a lot more similar to wild dogs, where they, instead of the surprise and that sudden burst of speed, like a lion or a leopard or a cheetah, they're a lot more of an endurance animal. So they will single out an animal and just basically exhaust it until it can't really move anymore. And so because they keep going and they're tenacious and they don't give up, they tend to have a higher success rate if they decide to hunt. There are certain areas within Africa. I know we've got a couple of lodges up in the Ngorongoro crater, and one of the guides that I met there was saying that it's not uncommon for lions to scavenge more from hyena kills than the other way around, which is a bit counterintuitive. So whilst we start making our way towards that waterhole that I mentioned we would like to get to, we'll send you across to Trish.
I am copying you again, Eric. I too am going to a different waterhole. We visited Twin Dams earlier, where not much was going on, although we did have a water monitor. And now, after doing a bit of a zigzag between the eastern boundary and central, I'm now going to head to Buffelshoek Dam just before. Though I'd like to just look at something. Did I see a branch? It was a branch. Gotta love it when that happens. More often than not, actually. Things are quite quiet for now out here, but I don't mind. Hello, Elise. You're 8 years old and you're from the UK. You'd like to know when is the best time of day to see a leopard. I think that early morning is a really nice time to see a leopard. Maybe about 5 a.m., in between 4 a.m. and 7 a.m. Around there is a good time, because that's when they're moving and they're out and about and they're hunting. In the day, you can still see them and find them, obviously. But they're usually sitting in one spot, so you've got to be looking at the right place at the right time. Also, in the evenings, that's also a good time. Hi Darcy, you're 6 years old? You'd like to know, well, where do the leopards sleep when they're not walking around? Any nice little comfy spot, maybe in a tree, maybe underneath a bush, somewhere where they can still remain a little bit hidden. In fact, under any of these bushes. This would be a nice bush if I were a leopard. See how it's nice and thick? That one right there. And if you look towards the ground, a leopard could slink in there and nobody would see it as we drove past. So spots like that. I know, Louise. Louise said, how great if there was a leopard there. It would be. So that's where they'd like to be. In fact, there's a bush near camp where Tingana was lying in, and none of us noticed him. None of us. Until, of course, we did, but a whole day had passed of going up and down, and nobody noticed him. All right. Off to the dam I go, and I'm going to send you back over to James and the lions. Sounds like a book.
I am astounded that Trishala has not bumped into 150 elephants by now. We couldn't turn a corner this morning without there being an elephant standing in the way. So I'm not sure where they've all gone or why they have chosen to forsake her. Our lions continue to fascinate us with their antics. This one is now trying to catch a fly. Well done, my dear. Well done. Classic through the grass shot there, David. Well done. And now some cleaning. Good. Apparently this one has an injured tongue. That sounds beastly. But now, because Louise mentioned it, she's lying down. Or she's lying down in objection. No, they don't, Eva. They actually don't at all. Everyone kind of looks after the cubs when they're together, like this. So no one of them is awake more than the other. And then when they go off hunting, they will leave the cubs on their own. Just listening to that silly impala. Now, if this was a leopard, if there was a leopard lying here, that noise would almost certainly make them lift their heads up and think about going towards the noise, because they know that the impala is not paying attention. But the lions don't seem to be vaguely interested, actually. I suppose that is the wont of lions, really. Jemaya, they'll be finished nursing around about 6 months, but it's quite interesting. If there are younger cubs that come into the pride, the older ones, which are a bit older than 6 months, will keep trying to nurse for longer than 6 months. But if... Oh, there's one that's up, David, quickly before it sits down. If there are younger cubs, or if there's just one set of cubs in the pride, yeah, about 6 months or so. This one is now relieving itself right next to its friends, which I suppose is somewhat more polite than they are sometimes. Oh, there's a little one. There we go, now we've got some big action. really do need them to come and play in this little clearing in front of us. That's it. There we go. Nice question from Yizu. I'm wondering if that is perhaps a name that comes from the old television program that we used to have in South Africa. Good question. Why do cats clean themselves so much? They clean themselves so much because they don't want to smell. And they don't want to smell not because they have a sort of profoundly sophisticated hygiene regime, but they don't want to smell because they don't want their prey to be able to smell them coming. So if you smell like a rotting carcass, chances are your prey will smell you coming. But if you clean yourself very carefully, then that isn't the case. Now, I've actually not ever read that, but I'm pretty sure it's true, because when you're close by to a lion or a leopard, they don't smell of anything. But when you're close to a wild dog or a hyena, they smell fairly dreadful. And so I'm pretty sure that this fastidious cleanliness routine that goes on is to make sure that they don't smell to their prey. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not sure which big cat has the most nutritious milk. We know that hyena supposedly have the most nutritious milk in the mammal kingdom. I'm not sure what we're referring to when we say the most nutritious milk. I don't know if it means the fat content, the mineral content, but apparently they are renowned for having the richest milk, which means it's probably the fat content. I don't know amongst the big cats, though. I would imagine the one that had the diet closest to the hyena, and that would be the lions. There's a bit of grunting and groaning going on behind that bush, and I suspect there might be some suckling. We might try and get a look there. The grass is just so very long. Let's go to Trish, who's apparently pointing at something.
I am pointing at something. There's a Burchell starling. Exactly. There we go, BK. Yes. There we go. Isn't that just a lovely view? It's hiding from BK and myself. It is one of the best sightings I've had this afternoon. Things have been quite quiet. But there's also a bit of a breeze in the air. And the weather and the environment, oh, there we go. Much better view. The weather and the environment can really play a part when it comes to sightings. Oh, look at it go. I want you to watch something interesting if it comes up the side again. That's quite a steep inclination. Oh, go up the other side so I can show the people. Isn't it gorgeous, though? It's like it's coming to say hi. What I did want to show you is that as they walk around, and you can see that it's in an old basically mud wallow, or old watering hole, very small one, and the edges of which are quite steep. Even there, as you saw, it jumped down. And it's so steep that one would think that perhaps the bird would fly up. But you'll notice, there we go. It's very steep, and it would prefer to walk. And only when it absolutely needs to will it flap its wings once or twice to give it just that edge to get up. And again, oh, I misjudged you, starling. Hi, James and Matthew. You'd like to know if I had to be a bird, which bird would I be? I would be a battlier. I like battliers very much. I think that they're quite cool looking. I think they have a, in a very good way, creepiness that I really love. Almost like they're wearing a cloak. And I really, really love the way they look, and their bright orange beak and face. I think they're beautiful. But if we're not talking birds that are currently existing, then I think, oh, that was quite interesting. Quetzalcoatlus, jeez, the way that thing is spelled is it's difficult, and I have to look at it in my head before I say it. Quetzalcoatlus. Probably still said it incorrectly. Anyway, it's a prehistoric bird with the largest wingspan. Then I think I wouldn't mind having a go at being that sometime too. Anyway, our starling is now moving off, so I'll send you over to James and see if his lions are starting to stir.
We've got a little bit of activity going on here. Say when, David?
Yeah.
Is that all right? There we are. That's quite fun, I'd say. Stations, the Djuma Private is still static, same place from this morning. That's very sweet. Logan, the most intelligent predator in Africa is the human being. We are by far the most resourceful predator. I'm assuming that's not what you meant. After that, I suppose I would say that the chimpanzee, which is a fearsome predator of colobus monkeys, is probably the next most intelligent. And after that, I don't really know. You know, they say that animals that are that the more social an animal is, the more complicated its social structure, the more intelligent by our measures it is considered to be. But I don't know if any of you have watched that rather horrendous show, The Tiger King, but I drove one of those guys once when I was very early on in my guiding career. I drove Doc Antle, and look, I don't know, I'm not going to comment on the rather heinous things that went on in that show, but anyway, he said to me that lions were really thick because of, he's taken captive lions to use in movies, and he said lions were gormless and that leopards were massively intelligent. Now, I don't know what that means. I guess that meant that you could teach leopards to do things that you couldn't teach lions to do. But that doesn't make lions stupid. That makes lions unsuitable for circuses, which they were never evolved for. They're massively intelligent when they go hunting. And they've got a much more complicated intelligence for hunting than a leopard does, because a leopard hunts on its own. But a leopard's probably got a much more complicated intelligence for staying hidden, for surviving it's a much more robust predator in that it can survive in a far greater number of different kinds of habitats. So, it's a difficult one. It's always nice to talk about intelligence because it's so difficult to define. What do we mean by intelligence? And even in human beings now, we don't define intelligence in one way. Some people are intelligent at mathematics. Some people are intelligent at languages, some at both. Your intelligence can actually change. They used to think that an IQ was something you were born with. That's not true. It changes throughout your life. But in general, the complicated nature or the complexity of social interactions means a greater number of neurons in the brain, a bigger brain, and I suspect a greater number of connections or a greater number of social interactions and complex machinations that need brain power. So a hyena is supposed to be massively intelligent. But then, if you go and you take something like a honey badger, which lives on its own, its ability to problem solve is almost second to none in the animal kingdom, but it's a solitary animal. And if you look at its skull, its brain is unusually large. I always like that question because there's so much you can talk about. So this is fairly standard now. Cubs slowly waking up, adults doing a little bit of awaking, and then a lot more sleeping. Joy in Nova Scotia, wondering when lions become independent. Well, the females start becoming useful members of the pride at around about 2 years, 18 months to 2 years. But that doesn't make them independent because they still have to live within the pride. But they could probably survive on their own if they were, if they were required to live on their own, they probably could. Male lions normally get kicked out around about the age of 3, but a 2.5-year-old male lion in an area that was prey-rich could happily survive. Yet again, another relatively unsatisfactory answer, I think, because there's no straight answer. And often, if somebody gives you a straight answer for a biological question, you need to ask them the question of whether that's actually true or not, because there are so many variables at play all the time. Hooray! Charla has found one of the 7 billion elephants on this reserve, and it looks like they're having some fun.
Yay, yes. I was so excited. It's a big bull having the time of his life. He's by himself. But he's flopping down. At one point I just saw the end of his trunk out of the water. we go. Flop down, get the whole body covered up, and have some fun. Well, if you enjoy having fun with us and watching these live and interactive safaris and elephants having the time of their lives, please go to our support page for which some information should appear on your screen. Yes, stretch a leg, see what you can do to help us out. We would love to continue to do this and show you this. Whoa! This guy is having the time of his life. Oh, there's some hippos nearby. 2 of them there. Maybe he just wants to make friends. There's a grey-headed bush shrike in the background. Now I can say that I think that was a half head shake in the water towards that hippo. Hippos are very territorial. Anushka, you'd like to know what that bird is that we can hear calling with the long whistle in the background? That's the one I just mentioned. It's a grey-headed bush shrike. It's sometimes called a ghost bird, because it's often heard but not seen. I remember it a different way. I think that the long whistle sounds haunting. Hi, Kruger Fanatic. You'd like to know if elephants swim more often in summer? From observation, definitely they swim when there's water. And because we have summer rains, that is the time when they can actually submerge their bodies and actually get a swim in. At other times during the year, the holes that they dig and the little pans that they find that still have water in them, unfortunately, are not sufficient for them to dunk themselves in totally and have a good swim. So it makes sense that summer rains means enough water for them to actually swim. So in the summer, definitely, we see that more often. Don't you love it when you can lie in a pool and then also get poolside snacks? I think that that's what's happening right here. Oh, what a lovely scene. I was saying to you that hippos are really territorial, and they are also, however, quite tolerant most of the time of elephants. I guess if you were the size, hello you, if you were the size of an elephant, it's a bit difficult for anyone to be intolerant of you. But when we get a whole lot of elephants around near a dam, it's beautiful for us, but then you see the hippos look just like that at you with a bit of a scowl. You can just imagine that they're thinking, we've got to share again. Lisa, well, you'd like to know, do the elephants and hippos actually get along well in the water? They prefer not to interact very much. So they're like, I don't know, they're like acquaintances. They know each other, but by no stretch are they friendly with each other. Oh, I'm going to move a little bit forward because there's a small gap in those bushes where our elephant is now dust bathing. I can just see the dust. And if you can just see in there, can you see it there, BK? Small gap. I quite like when we get to observe animals and they don't know that we're observing them. I don't know what it is about it, but it's as if you're seeing them totally unadjusted by our presence. Not that our presence is a bad thing, but just like you are slightly adjusted to people's presence when you are in the presence of someone else. Oh, that must feel so good. Lisa, you actually wanted to know, well, how often do these guys get into the water? As often as they can. Like we spoke about earlier about summer being our rainy season, that's when we get most water. They take advantage of that season most, but during that time, as often as they can and want to, they will be in the water. Elephants love the water. They really, really do. Now, possibly, there is a herd nearby that this bull has decided to follow, or is distantly following. So I think I'm going to go up to the cut line and see if we can see any others. Perhaps some playful youngsters. James's youngsters are a little less playful at the moment, but they are cuddle puddle.
They are a cuddle puddle in amongst the grass. Just listen to the Senegal lapwings briefly. Now you'll see the bigger ones trying to suckle, even though they are way past suckling age now. And you'll see the adult getting irritated by it. Naturally, they are now moving away from where we can see them. Now, I know that you spoke extensively about mange this morning. And I don't know what's going to happen with mange in this pride. It's definitely in amongst the pride. Don't know the effect it's going to have. They've overcome it before, and I think they'll overcome it again. But who knows? All right, David, we go back again, shall we?
Yes.
Christo, we don't really know the answer to that question, but we think so, yes. And there's an interesting sort of... How's that, Dov? There's an interesting... what do you call it? Complex. The major histocompatibility complex, which is a method by which animals can tell the relatedness of other animals, and basically it's done through hormones and smell, and it's what makes a person who's closely related to you smell familiar, and what makes a total stranger smell unfamiliar. Now, these animals all have the major histocompatibility complex, and it helps them discern whether they're related to one another or not. So, in essence, yes, I do think they can tell whether they're related to one another, but I don't know that they're making the link between something that smells familiar and the psychology that says this is family. So I think it's much more just that this smells familiar, and so I won't try and kill it or chase it away. Even the adults are carrying this mange. Yes, absolutely it does, Sue. Grooming and licking each other most certainly spreads the mange. They're not practicing social distancing, and it will make a huge difference. The mite that causes the mange jumps from one animal to the other. So these guys lie in close proximity to each other. They rub each other all the time, and so it's inevitable that once it gets into one member of the pride, it'll get into all the others too. And it obviously causes a lot of very unpleasant itching. And it's not actually fatal in so much as it, doesn't weaken the animal, it doesn't kill the animal, like other skin diseases might. But what it does do is they will eventually scratch the fur right off their bodies, and that obviously brings with it problems, and they can open up wounds that will get infected, and they can get disease, and they can get so weakened from this desperate scratching that it can eventually kill them. But it's very unlikely to, in this pride, I don't think. Let's go across to Eric, and I'm reliably informed that he doesn't have mange or scabies, so that's very good. Well done, Eric.
I'm glad I don't have mange, actually. Although my hair all of a sudden has gotten a lot shorter, but that's from a very kind ranger by the name of Nicky who gave me a haircut the other day. It was really cool. He came, it was like a cut your hair at home, a delivery barber. So he rocked up with all of his equipment, sat me down, asked me what I wanted. Yeah, so it was a really, really good experience. But I guess the only thing that he might need to work on is the actual hair cutting part. I wake up in the morning looking like Sonic the Hedgehog. I've just got hair all over the place. But better than that little cow's lick that I had, or that mullet that I was starting to grow. What did you say? Yeah. Oh, so we've actually come back towards the river. Our adventure down in the deep south got interrupted. And we are now heading along the riverbank. So now we basically if the river was flowing, it would be downstream. So we're heading in this direction over here. And earlier this morning, when Marcel had his mid-morning fun facts, we did find some leopard scats, and there were tracks of a female leopard who were maybe about 1 kilometer up this road, and they were walking in this direction. We did lose the tracks, but we're back in the area to see if we can potentially see what's going on. See if she might be out and about moving. She does have 2 cubs, so she might have gone off to hunt for the evening, and maybe she went to go and fetch them. It's been a really, really beautiful day. It hasn't been too hot. So Sarah is asking about the tiny little lion cubs that we were fortunate enough to see. Must have been almost 2 weeks ago now, somewhere around there. Yeah. Sarah, unfortunately, we haven't seen them again. We do regularly check that area, We have an idea of where she might be denning, but we also don't want to put too much pressure on her. So we're almost leaving it in her own hands. We are just waiting for her to introduce the cubs to us. And so we check every now and again around that area. If we don't find her, we leave immediately. If she does get found, then we will hang around that area just in case she does decide to bring them out. But no further sightings, unfortunately. She's done really well. I mean, it's her first attempt that we know of giving birth, and you know, she's doing all the right things. Sometimes inexperienced mothers, especially lions, might feel the pressure of being by themselves. And so they might, especially in the early stages of the cub's life, they might try and find the rest of the pride again and return. And that period in between might be a little bit too long for the cubs, and sometimes the cubs will end up dying like that. But it doesn't seem like she's had that issue whatsoever. We've got some nice tracks of elephants here. It's just really quite a nice way to show you the direction quickly. Jean, now I'll answer your question in a little second, but just whilst I'm stopped here, I wanted to show you the direction that these elephants were moving. And so there's quite a defined scrape mark. Can you see it? Which one? This one? This one, okay, cool. So if you look at the track, and there's two distinctive features here. There's a very, very smooth and shiny part, and then it kind of fades over here. And so when an elephant walks, it walks like this. It will plant its foot down and then kick like that. And so this side always is much, much more defined and shiny. And so these elephants were walking this way. And then if you look at the line of dung, so there's one pile here, one there, one there. And that could be from one elephant. And so, I mean, it didn't stop whilst it was going to the loo, which probably means that it was trying to walk quite quickly. And so these elephants could have gone quite far away already. And then, John, you had a question about the cubs' mortality rates here at Ngala. For the last 2 years that I've been here, the pride of lions that we see most often has been very stable. So the male lions that are in this area have held the area well, and they haven't really had any challenges come in. So I'm just trying to think of the original litter size. 3 females gave birth at almost exactly the same time, and I think there was a total of 10 cubs there. Of those 10 cubs, there are now 6 left. 4 of them died at quite a young age, and we're not sure what. We literally left them in the evening, came back in the morning, there was 1 missing, and then a couple of weeks later another one, and another one. So we're not entirely sure they died. And then the second batch came through, and that's the female, well, the 2 very small females within the pride, and they off with cubs, and 2 of them did. Cub actually behind mother, them up in cubs. The one was to, okay, we might do that really short up a signal doing, so we'll go across to.
I'm sure you will get through this difficult patch. I heard an alarm call. But at this time it's so unreliable from Impala because it sounds like them rutting is basically their alarm call. The same sound is used. But somehow you can get a sense. It was one short burst. Now I'm just having a look around, but I don't see any tracks either. So when it comes to the reliability of those alarm calls, it's certainly in the downward slope during this time. But always worth a check. Like with Hukumuri yesterday. Did I have him? Was it yesterday morning? Yesterday morning. The Impala was sounding like how they do when they rut. But they were alarming at him as he walked by. So I always think it's important to just have a look. And I did. It sounded like it was coming from the northern fire break. And I did a loop around, but I didn't see anything, and most importantly, I didn't see any tracks. I'm now on the eastern side of Buffelshoek Dam. It's a road that we don't often take, but it's quite a nice one. It's very bushy. It's in the same direction actually as that big bull had come in. Casper, you're 6 years old. You'd like to know what's my favorite word in the South African language. South Africa has 11 official languages, but the area that I was born in, KwaZulu-Natal, there we speak Zulu. And I did Zulu in school, in primary school, and there's a number of Zulu words that I like. I remember when I was very little, my grandfather used to tease me, well, not very little, but little, that I'm shorty makoti, because I'm pretty short. Everyone knows. So makoti basically means it means vulture, but it also means lady or wife, right? Like marriageable aged lady. So they used to call me Shorty Makoti, so that kind of stuck. And owl, which I really like as well, in Zulu is skova. I like that word as well. Also because I really like owls. Now I have a bull that's running away from me. We may be able to see a bit of the butt. There we go. A little bit of elephant there for you. That came from the front end, everyone. I'm sure. Sometimes when you watch an elephant's tail, it can hypnotize you, and it swings from side to side. Of course, as soon. Oh, go. You are getting sleepy. And off it goes into the thickets. The same bull that we had earlier. You can still see patches of him that's quite wet, and the patches where he's thrown the sand on him. There are plenty of South African words that are pretty cool that I quite like. Yo is definitely a nice one. I'll let James explain what that means and how to use it.
Yes, good idea to let me explain that one, because I think that probably is my favorite word. Yo, which is just so expressive, so self-explanatory, that Patrick Fitzgerald, the Australian who used to work for us, got it tattooed on his person before he left South Africa. So basically it just means, oh my goodness, that's absolutely astounding. And you say, oh, that was just 3 words, 3 letters. Yo. Yo. It's got to be said right, though. You can't just kind of walk into a room and find baboons have been in there and they've liberally scattered their dung all over the place and go in and say, yo. It doesn't work. You've got to walk in, open your eyes wide and say, yo. And that expresses everything that you need to. One of Louise's favourite words is a pantoffel. I don't know what that is. What is that, Louise? A slipper. A slipper. One of my other favourite words is the word boemelaar. A boemelaar is a tramp in Afrikaans. And I use it to describe people who are slovenly in their appearance. And I say they look like a boemelaar, which I think is a very expressive word. It's an Afrikaans word. And that's another thing, yes. Trishada's just radioed through the word techies. Most of you won't know what techies are. Techies are tackies, and tackies are basically sneakers, or what we used to refer to as plimsolls. That's definitely not my favourite word, plimsoll. I know what my worst word in the English language is. My very worst word in the English language is fart. Oh, I don't know why. Can't do it. The word is just dreadful. You'll never hear me say an animal has just farted. I will always say it passed wind, baffed, let out some gas, made a squeaker, gave a bit of a bubble. I just can't say that word. I don't know why I find it so offensive. Let me just move a little bit here again. Yeah, Robin, aish and highball, very good words, but yo says it all. It's a very similar kind of meaning. Yo. Like when I hit the stump, I'll say yo. Ah, well, MGN, thank you. You say your favourite word is the word bush. Well, there are a lot of bushes around here, and these bushes have got in the way of our enjoyment of these lions this afternoon. Maybe they will move out of the bush. There's old Amber Eyes. Hello, my dear. Is that her? I think it is. Going to sleep. Hello, Amber Eyes. Many of you will know that I've oft objected to the name Amber Eyes because it makes her sound like a character from a soap opera. Then I've got in trouble for even knowing that there was a character named Amber in a soap opera. And I think that's her son lying on her. He's also got amber eyes. That was the woodpecker calling. Well, territorially tapping, at any rate. Well, I mean, at least they've done something today, right? If they'd been closer to the valley of the Great Mlomati, there wouldn't have been quite so much grass cover. But they've chosen to be on the ridge crest this afternoon, or close to it. And that's meant this long grass, which surely must be itchy when you have mange. I mean, I'd go and find a nice bare patch of sand to lie in. Right, we're now going to go to Eric, who's going to give you a long list of his favourite South African words. I would suggest that you ask Marcel the same, but tell him to be short.
So, starting off with Marcel, he thought about this for less than 1 second, and his favourite word is?
Lekker.
Lekker. A true Afrikaans man. For me, it's one of those things that I think I'm overthinking a lot and I don't really have an answer. The word that I probably say most in English is brew, which is similar to bro, brother, whatever the case may be. But my favorite, I think, is the bird names for Afrikaans, or the Afrikaans names for birds, sorry. And just to directly translate them from Afrikaans into English, I think is one of the funniest things. Like, yeah, Marcel's saying bergaan, that means berg, a mountain rooster or mountain chicken. Another favorite is a geelkeel kalkoentjie, which directly translates to a yellow-throated little turkey, and that's a bird called a yellow-throated longclaw. Then there's also one called a landerij klopkloppie, which translates to agricultural lines noisy, which is so it's, yeah, I think that's probably in Zulu. I really like some of the words with clicks. I know the Zulu word for striped polecat is ikoqo. One of the words that I learned from school is as blue as the sky, and that's in Hlaza and Jesse Sibaga Baga, which is also quite a tongue twister. Yeah, I think. Do you have any other favorites, Marcel?
Ja, nee.
Ja, nee, another very typical Afrikaans expression. Yes, no?
No.
Lou in control saying that one of her favorite Afrikaans animal names is a tierboskat. Well, I don't even know what that means.
It's a serval.
It's a serval. A tiger bush cat is the direct translation.
I think it's great.
Yeah, it's a pretty apt description, I guess. The Afrikaans is such a descriptive language. That's why I love the direct translation so much. Yep. Quite a nice big herd of impala here, Marcel. A ratel, also honey badger in Afrikaans. So such a nice herd of impalas we just saw here. Still quite clearly in the rutting season. I mean, that one male with a whole herd of females, and it looks like he's done a really good job. All of these females are really close together. It is coming to that day that I think they're looking to settle down, so they'll try and group together as much as they can. As soon as they get isolated, that's when it's a lot easier for a predator to pick them apart. So staying in a group like this is quite important for impala, especially at this time of day. I think we're going to stick around these impalas maybe for a few more minutes, but Trish is one of my favorite birds, so let's go and see what it is.
Oh, I'm so glad it's one of your favorites. It is a Coqui Franklin. Isn't it just gorgeous? I love that orange head. Unmistakable. Truly unmistakable. So we have a male and a female here. Here's a female at the top. Now these guys usually move away pretty quickly, but looks like this particular guy is interested in me. Hello. Can you see him there on the side? Okay. Oh, and off he goes. So if this Coqui Franklin was South African, he might say, check the stick here. It's a lekker stikkie. But maybe she's too lighty for him. Brah. Have to complete the sentence. Oh, maybe I'm too Lani for it as well. That whole sentence just means look at this girl. she looks nice. Maybe she's too young for me, or maybe she thinks she's too good for me. There's certain words that you actually don't realize they're English words for. Like when I was growing up, I didn't know that there was a different word for tackies. The only word I knew for sneakers was tackies, and that's the Afrikaans word for sneakers. And then I went to other parts of the world, and I was like, my tackies, I'm looking for my tackies. I'll go to gym, where's my tackies? And everyone's like, what are you talking about? And then I finally learned that in Australia they're referred to as runners, and then it's like, okay, my runners. Then I go to other parts of the world, and you're like, what? Oh, you mean your sneakers? I still like tackies. Never goes away, tackies. And braai. Braai never goes away either. If I need to explain that it means barbecue, I can do that. But I find it very difficult to say, would you like to come over for a braai? Just can't do barbecue. I think South Africa has a really awesome mix of languages, races, cultures, all kinds of things that mash up into this strange slang. The strange slang that comes out that we all suddenly understand, which I quite like. Now, I saw tracks for a female leopard on her own, moving straight out of Djuma and into Torchwood, around hippo pools. I was hoping I would have seen I will get to that. Let me just complete this 1 second. So I think it was Tandy, but I did not see cub tracks. But Gabriel in the UK would like to know, what do we eat at camp? We're pretty spoilt at the moment, I must say. We have braais sometimes. We have lamb biryani. We have chapatis and puris and rotis and lots of Indian dishes. Then we have roast chicken, roast lamb. We have Mexican. Well, we eat well. We eat very well. We often have desserts as well. I made pecan nut pie once, made strawberry lemon cheesecake. I made one of those pyramid cheesecakes. We've made pizzas and lasagnas and pastas and KFC night. Louise and I did KFC night once. That was amazing. Oh, fresh bread, fresh croissants. That was a once-off though. That was only today, and that was only 6. But still, I ate the majority of them. We really do eat well, and I think that being in lockdown has really motivated us to eat well and cook well. Anyway, back to the wildlife, James's lions are finally staring properly, so let's go over.
They are awake-ish. I wouldn't describe them as massively awake. I'd describe them as fairly sleepy. While they're not doing anything, please do consider supporting us. You can do that using the website address wildearth.tv/support. And your help would obviously be hugely appreciated. And as I always like to say, this is free to watch, but it ain't so free to produce. Oh, look, there's a little hug going on there. That's always nice. Oh, it's very sweet. That you could hear was the passing of wind of a Toyota Land Cruiser. They're very loud when they pass wind. When they are flatulent. The key there, Jenna, is in the word retract versus the word protract. Now, a lion does not actually retract its claws, it protracts its claws. So the resting position is inside the foot. So if you've got a house cat, you know that. They don't pull them back, they push them out. And if a cheetah had to do that, they would be ineffective as the running spikes that they are. So the cheetah needs them as running spikes, needs them to gain massive grip on a long chase. These guys no doubt stick their claws out when they're trying to take off, but it's an explosive movement. They don't have to push the claws out continuously over a long period. And I think you'll find that's why they've adapted to protract them, and the cheetah has them semi-permanently protracted. The advantage of having them internally when they're relaxed is that they stay sharp, and a cheetah's claws will be like a dog's, much blunter than a cat's, and that makes them ineffective as killing instruments or instruments of the hunt, but they are more important to the cheetah as running spikes, and that's why they've got them semi-protracted. And everything's calmed down again. There is some suckling going on, and definitely some cubs older than 6 months doing the suckling there. Oh, Carol, that's a good one. What's the most asked question on WildEarth? It depends if we're talking about kids drive or we're talking about adults drive. In kids drive, you're always going to get how big is that elephant, or what does the elephant weigh, how much does it eat, how long. The most asked question when we see lions like this is how long do they sleep for. I think definitely that's the most asked question. How long do lions sleep for? With leopards, there's always this question of what's the difference between leopards and cheetah, but not from adults, mainly from kids, which is a good question. The universal favorite, how many spots does a leopard have? Also, the question, what is your favorite sighting ever? And I really don't like those questions, simply not because they're bad questions, because I can never think of an incident. What's your best? What's your most dangerous? What's your favorite? What's most exceptional sighting you've ever had? I always feel like I've been put on the spot and I can never think of anything. And thank you for all asking those questions. I will not be answering any of them this evening, only tomorrow. Louis de Lion, at the risk of sounding rude, shut up. Louis de Lion, everybody, in case you think I'm genuinely being rude to him, is just trying to yank my chain. Louis de Lion knows very well that we don't get tigers here. Louis de Lion, I think, is the first viewer I've ever told to be quiet. My apologies. Please don't take offense. I meant none. What else do we get asked all the time? How tall are giraffe? These are mainly kids' questions, though. The intelligence one is one that we get asked very often. Oh yes, that other absolute corker. Are zebras black with white stripes or white with black, at least black with white stripes? Deeply irksome. Louis DeLine, you're going to be blocked from Twitter on my order very quickly. Do chickens have lips, and why did the chicken cross the road? Louis, we all know why the chicken crossed the road. And the answer was because it was suicidal and trying to get run over. Do they have lips? I've never heard that asked before. In fact, Louis, that's the first time I've heard it. And the answer is, I don't think so, no. They've got a beak. Hello, Sayanj. A lion cub's roar can probably be heard. I'm going to guess here, Sayanj, if you were at the hearing of another lion, probably from about 1 kilometer. But if you had our hearing, not that far, maybe half a kilometer, 400 meters. Depends also how old the cub is, you know. When they're very little, they hardly make any noise at all, but when they're about this age, they can actually make a loud growling noise. Because what's happening now is that the voice box is starting to harden and form. That's why they can start to make louder noises. Let's go across to Trishala now. She's gone all the way terra incognito to the southeast.
I am all the way over on Chitwa. I thought I'd just check out what's happening here before I return towards the central portions of Djuma. So far I haven't seen any tracks, but hopefully that will change. I've just been down that road where Sabuya and her cubs were with that kill. Didn't see any tracks there, so next port of call, the road where I normally see Kuchava. See, everything's been neatened up very nicely. I saw one impala though. And a couple starlings. And the roads look like they've recently been dragged, which is awesome for tracks because that means that they're super clear. And you can actually see them quite up ahead. And you know, you often see me do this. That's when I want to check out something that I've seen up ahead on the road and I want to have a closer look. But with the roads like this, recently dragged and beautiful, it's really easy to spot leopard tracks. Let's pop up onto the dam wall. Hi Crystal, you'd like to know if I think that predators understand the different sounds that they make interspecies-wise. I think that they do, but I'll tell you from what perspective I think that as we have a look at this glorious dam. I think that a lion can recognize that a leopard is sawing. I think a lion can recognize a hyena whooping, because they all share a similar niche. They're all predators, and they all have to be aware of each other. Because, for example, if I'm a leopard and I hear a lion roaring, in fact, yesterday, Hukumuri was a great example of that, because he was walking along Viotella Access, and there were lions roaring faintly in the distance, and he turned to look in that direction. So they definitely know. No.